today. Alhamdulillah, I'm coming here on behalf of the Islamic Seminary of America with something called the Believing Academic Bookshelf. The Believing Academic Bookshelf. And the whole purpose of the Believing Academic Bookshelf is to make recommendations to the Muslim community from something in our curriculum that you might look at for the blessed month of Ramadan. Since I'm late, I'll cut my comments kind of short because I know we don't want to get into people's time. But the book I'm recommending today is the Autobiography of Malcolm X. And so, alhamdulillah, this is Black History Month, and so it's appropriate. And also, it's a book that led to my, alhamdulillah, conversion to Islam over 40 years ago, so mashallah. What I want to suggest to you is three things about this book that might make it good for a book to be on your bookshelf if you don't already have it, might be useful during Ramadan. First of all, the book introduces people who are not familiar with it to the notion of racism in the United States of America back in the 1940s and the 50s, which is very different from the way it is now. Malcolm Little was born on May 19, 1925 in Omaha, Nebraska. And the thing that you need to understand about that is that at this particular time, there was racism, of course, in the United States, but there were two particular kinds. One is the kind that we're familiar with. If you go to the Equal Justice Initiative.org, the EJI.org, you'll find that between 1877 and 1950, 4,075 African Americans were lynched in the United States, in the southern United States, and another 300 were lynched in the northern or the rest of the United States. The point about this is that when you think about Malcolm X and you think about race relations, you think of this kind of thing that's going on in the United States of America. But parallel to this, at this time, was a racial movement that focused on white people first, but ultimately focused on black and brown people. That movement is called the eugenics movement. In 1921, 1930s, you had American Eugenics Society in key places in the United States. One of those places was at Yale University, one of my alum where I went to school, where they had a eugenics headquarters. What is eugenics? Eugenics is the science of improving the race. The science of improving the race. This was going on while these 4,000 black people were being lynched and some other people were being lynched, including Jews. This was a eugenics movement. And this is something that came out of World War I with the idea that during World War I, all the good white males had been taken up in the war, so we needed some kind of activity to deal with that. And so the eugenics movement was highlighted by a case that went before the Supreme Court called Buck versus Bell, which was about a young woman who was from Virginia, who was declared mentally incompetent, was called an imbecile, and the United States Supreme Court, on behalf of the state of Virginia, was asked to have her sterilized. This happened in 1927, and this went before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court okayed her sterilization, but the whole purpose of the state of Virginia bringing this was to implement a law and a situation so that other states could sterilize people that they felt were mentally unfit. Again, this is somebody white. As a result of Buck versus Bell, 70,000 people in the United States of America were sterilized between 1927 and the 1970s. It started with white people that were deemed deficient, but it ended up with black and brown people. So the reason I'm talking about this in relationship to the Autobiography of Malcolm X is that the Autobiography of Malcolm X and the setting is a setting where racism and the eugenics held sway. Autobiography of Malcolm X is a book that if you want to understand the history of the United States of America If you want to understand the history of Islam in America, you must read this book. So the first point is that the background was this racialism. One kind was aimed at black people, and then another kind was aimed at defective white people. The second thing to know about the Autobiography of Malcolm X is that Islam / the Nation of Islam, which was not practicing Islam according to what we understand it today, was a reclamation project. That is, an attempt to redeem African Americans in this place during the 1930s and 40s and 50s. And so Malcolm Little, after going into a life of crime, going to Boston, getting locked up, he ran into the Nation of Islam. It's during this time, while he was in prison, that he saw the Nation of Islam as his salvation. In prison, there's a chapter in the book called Satan. They called him Satan. There's a chapter in the book called Satan. That's how rough he was when he went into prison in Massachusetts. And so it was a reclamation project. There's no doubt that what was called the Nation of Islam, indeed led many people like Malcolm Little, became Malcolm X, out of crime, out of the kind of immorality, out of the kind of difficulties that they saw in the city of America. But the reality is that we need to understand that when you look at what they were calling Islam, and even today's Nation of Islam, if you go to their website, noi.org, you'll find that on their website, what they want and what they believe, they say that God came in the person of a man, na'udhu billahi. And so that's the second point. The first point is that the Nation of Islam was a reaction to the racism that was going on, particularly against black people. But I want you to remember that it was also, they were trying to do something to white people at the same time. And so the reason why I bring up this issue about white people is that this is something that actually happened at the same time that black people were being lynched. I like to offer books. There's a book called The War Against the Weak. The War Against the Weak, America's Effort to Create a Super Race. The War Against the Weak, America's Effort to Create a Super Race. Out of this eugenics movement came books and college courses and efforts, and they even had competitions at fairs for the best family. And so this is a very serious thing that was going on. So the final point I want to make in my shortened comments is that one way of looking at the Autobiography of Malcolm X and reading the Autobiography of Malcolm X is to understand that the civil rights movement, which Malcolm X was a part of, the civil rights movement led to the change in the American racist immigration laws. Up until 1965, the immigration laws were aimed at bringing primarily white people to the United States. It was because of the push of the civil rights movement, the efforts of the civil rights movement, that this new immigration law was passed. And so what we see is a large number of people coming from places in the world who were prohibited. For instance, Asians, for instance, Africans, Arabs. And this changed the whole face of America on one hand. It changed the whole face of Islam on the other hand. My point in bringing this up is that it is way past time for Muslims who are African Americans who were born here and Muslims who immigrated to this country since the immigration laws changed to join together. It's way past time for us to join together, because in doing so we would be doing two things. We would be emulating the founding community of our beloved alayhi salatu wasalam. If our beloved alayhi salatu wasalam's community was around today in the United States, it would get canceled. It was a diverse community. You know better than I, if you read the Sirah, that it was a diverse community. It was an equitable community. In other words, nobody was better than anybody else based on race or something like that. This is during tribal times. And it was an inclusive community. It included people from different places in the world, and included men and women, and included rich and poor. Go back and read the Sirah. So my point about this is that if people who primarily immigrated or their second and third generations came in here as a result of the 1965 change in the Immigration Act, and the people who are African American like myself, if we came together for the purpose of strengthening Islam and being the moral leadership for this country, because after all, one of the things that Malcolm X said when he came back from Mecca at the same time is that the answer to the race problem in the United States is Islam. I would agree with him in the sense that if you look again at the founding community of our beloved alayhi salatu wasalam, if we followed his role model, it could solve a lot of racial problems we have within and outside of the Muslim community. Those of you who've read the Autobiography of Malcolm X know exactly what I'm talking about, because after preaching that the white man was the devil, this so-called Yaqub theory, that the white man was the devil for many, many years, and after leaving the Nation of Islam with his famous split and going on Hajj, I believe, for the second time, he wrote back these words. He says, "I'm for truth, no matter who speaks it. I'm for justice, no matter who it's for or against. I'm a human being first and foremost, and as such, I'm for whomever and whatever benefits humanity as a whole." So we recommend, those of us at Islamic Seminary of America, for those of you, of course, many of us will only focus on Quran, but some of us like to try to read something else that might be beneficial. If you want to read something beneficial, you might try to Autobiography of Malcolm X. Is available for $10, and it's the kind of book that's led to many, many people, alhamdulillah, taking Shahada. I was in a program the other night with Sheikh Chad over at IACC, Islamic Association of Collin County, and he, a young white man, read the same autobiography and it changed his life. And so for many people, reading the transformative nature of Islam and watching the development of Malcolm X in the face of racism, in the face of trying to reclaim himself, in the face of his difficulties, become a Muslim spokesperson who was traveling around the world, was an inspirational story. So to close out my comments, I want to say that this is a book that we use in two courses. One is Islam in America, because we start the course by talking about the fact that you don't understand Islam in America without reading the Autobiography of Malcolm X. And the other one is a course called Navigating Muslim American Cultures and Identities, where we're looking at identities. Let me just say this. I've been to Islamic Center of Irving many times, and let me just say that if anybody at Islamic Center of Irving wants to get a master's in Islamic study or master's of divinity, if they're qualified, if they meet our admissions criteria, we would make sure that they could go tuition free. And this is an education that's aimed at developing both thought leaders and institutional leaders in the United States. We also have something called the Islamic Leadership and Management Certificate, which is only 5 courses, not a master's course, where people who are interested in taking leadership positions both within and outside of the Muslim community. It's a program that we just started and that we also have some scholarship money for. If you can't afford it, you take 5 graduate level courses, and again, you have to be admitted to the Islamic Center of America. You'll have the opportunity to do so. So understand that we in this country, even during these difficult times, have the obligation and the opportunity to join together Muslims no matter what our ethnic background. We have the opportunity and the obligation. I say the obligation because of what the Quran says about us being a witness to all humanity. I say the opportunity because when things are in difficult situations, remember, our beloved Prophet ﷺ came to Mecca at a time when the Kaaba had been besmirched by idol worshippers, right? It was turned from Baytullah to a place for worshiping idols. That was a crisis time. Remember in the Quran that Allah Ta'ala teaches us over and over again about the confrontation between Musa alayhi salam and Pharaoh as an object lesson for times like these. Again, we have the opportunity, we have the application to come together. That is, Muslims from different ethnic backgrounds, particularly those Muslims who in the African American community came into Islam, and those Muslims who are first generation, second generation immigration. If we got together, we would make a powerful leadership in this country because, as you know, things are difficult right now. Alhamdulillah, I hope this has been beneficial to you. These believing academic book talks are aimed at imparting you some of the knowledge that we impart in the classrooms. And if you have any questions or comments, I'll take them now before we close up. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Anybody? Okay, nobody? Alhamdulillah. So anyway, if you want to learn more about what we do at the Islamic Seminary of America, it's islamicseminary.us. That's our website. You can email me at james.jones@islamicseminary.us if you wanted to find out more about what we're doing. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. Inshallah, this will be beneficial to you. May Allah Ta'ala bless us all, and may He preserve us to Ramadan, and may He make Ramadan beneficial for us this year, and may we reach Ramadan and get the blessings of that blessing time. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah kathirin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is something. There's some people who are suing the United States government. The family of Malcolm X is suing. It seems like the FBI and CIA do a lot more.
When I have used just a little bit, was it a kind of careless? You notice FBI, CIA, they are coming to do assassination, but they did not care. So obviously government was kind of responsible for that as well, right? I mean, so why is it taking so long to bring them in the streets? And I hope we will have some day